I'm Meagan Tuckerman. I'm actually the Head of Audience at IAG and your facilitator for today's discussion. Today we're talking about engaging the next generation. So we're talking about Gen Z, Gen Alpha and Millennials and how we can transform life and health insurance so it connects with them. So let's start with the truth. We all know New Zealand is one of the most underinsured countries in the developed world. For many younger New Zealanders, life and health insurance feels poor, complicated, expensive, or just irrelevant to their everyday lives. And that means too many people are missing out in life on the protection they need when life throws them a curveball. But here's the exciting part, and it is a huge opportunity. Millennials are now the largest group in the workforce. Gen Z is stepping into their careers, and Gen Alpha are growing up in a fully digital world. These generations expect services that are simple, fast and fair, and they want brands that stand for something. So today's session is about reimagining how we show up for them. We're going to explore what we're not quite getting right, how we can design products and experiences that feel relevant and affordable for them, and how we can rethink the way we think about insurance so it's something people engage with and maybe even share. We know compliance can make this really tricky, but younger generations are showing us that they do want to connect with services, including insurance, in a way that makes sense to them, as seamless, digital and human. So how do we balance those regulatory requirements while showing up in the right places with the right messages at the right time? So by the end of this masterclass, we'll hope you'll leave with fresh insights into the younger generation, what they're looking for, some practical ideas, and maybe a bit of inspiration to try something a little bit bold and different. We want people to talk about insurance in a really positive way. To do that, we've brought together a fantastic panel up here that you'll see to help explore this channel. We'll be doing a session up here with a Q&A with myself, and then they'll actually be down on the floor with you, going through some questions and getting the opportunity to talk to them directly. We'll kick off with two mini keynotes. First is Hilary Ngan. Hi, Hilary. Hilary is partner and head of strategy at Motion Sickness. Hilary has a knack for finding the human truth behind every campaign and making brands stand out in a way that really connects with people. Her work has been recognised globally, from Gold Effie wins to Cannes Grand Prix Awards. And today she'll share how to cut through the noise and create campaigns that truly resonate with younger audiences. Then we'll hear from Naomi Garry. Hi Naomi, welcome. Head of Strategy and Analytics at Sharesies. Naomi is passionate about using data to create accessible and engaging financial experiences. She'll take us behind the scenes of how Sharesies built trust with the new generation of investors and what insurance can learn from their approach. And then we'll move to our panel discussion with Christopher Walsh and Dean Anderson. Christopher, hi Christopher, they're not in order. Christopher is the founder of MoneyHub, one of New Zealand's most trusted personal finance platforms, helping over 500,000 Kiwis each month make smarter money decisions. He'll bring us a consumer view, what young people are really looking for when it comes to financial products, including life and health. And finally, we have Dean Anderson, the one person left up there that you haven't seen so far. He's the founder and CEO of Kernel. Dean is passionate about democratising wealth and has built a fintech platform focused on helping people achieve financial freedom. He'll share his perspective on innovation, accessibility, and how technology can break down barriers for younger audiences. So we've got a lot of ground to cover. Hilary, over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for such a warm welcome, Meagan. I'm sure when you came to FSC25, you weren't expecting to have a conversation about herpes. And to be honest, I wasn't expecting to be here having this conversation. But today is, I think, a little bit of inspiration and hopefully a little bit of a nudge to maybe think big. I'm going to share a piece of work that myself and the team at Motion Sickness, who are an advertising agency here in Auckland, a piece of work that we produced that is a little bit different and approached a topic that no one really wanted to talk about and got them engaged. So without further ado, we'll jump into it. How we made New Zealand the best place in the world to have herpes. Cool. So a little bit about kind of the background. 1 in 4 people in this room probably have herpes. It's one of the most common viruses in the world, and it's been around as long as humankind has, really. So that's not the problem. The problem is the stigma. So the real harm from this virus, it's medically insignificant for most people, is actually the mental health impact of having the virus. So probably, maybe 18 months ago now, the New Zealand Herpes Foundation approached us with what they called internally the impossible brief. Really great when that lands on your desk. And their brief was to develop a campaign that reduces the social stigma of herpes among New Zealand's sexually active. So no small feat. And I guess as a little bit of background, the stigma for herpes has only existed sort of for the last 30, 40 years. It coincides with the invention of antiviral medicine and basically pharmaceutical companies wanting to find a market for that. So making people really scared of something is a great way to kind of motivate them to purchase your product. This 1982 Time magazine cover is sort of the culmination of that, Herpes, the Scarlet Letter. And from that point onwards, the only time that we really ever talk about it or hear about it in public is when someone's making a joke about herpes. So we kind of looked at this and thought, well, maybe this brief isn't so impossible. If communications made this problem, maybe we can use communications to solve it. This is not what we did. It's actually some real ads that the Herpes Foundation produced way back, because this is something they've been working on for 30 years, trying to basically break the stigma. So as you can see, some really good facts here, which still ring true today. Let's end the stigma and talk about herpes. And I guess the key thing that I'd like you to take away from this is something that I think we often do is assume that people are rational and that giving people facts and information, they'll take that in and they'll do something with it. And ultimately, I think what we find in our work every day is that humans are incredibly irrational. And so being able to connect with that kind of irrational side of people's minds and that actually makes us human, that's kind of where the magic is. So this is where the idea started. A giant digital ad that basically made herpes the biggest part of it, the best place in the world to have herpes.com. And there was something about this when our creative director, one of our creative directors in the team, Mel, came to us with this, I've got this idea. There was something that just felt interesting about it. So a bit of backstory of where this came from. You know, no one wanted to talk about herpes. We knew that. We'd kind of been sitting here thinking about how will we make this kind of a topic. We also had not really much budget. We knew that we needed to get basically New Zealand to start having this conversation with each other because we couldn't afford to get it in front of people ourselves. But at the time when we were developing this work, things just felt a bit bleak, you know, and that was in big ways and little ways. And some of the little ways were quite funny, you know, like New Zealand named the UK's second most attractive accent. New Zealand slipped down the world's best countries ranking. Everything was kind of, we'd lost the World Cup, all that kind of stuff. So we thought maybe the solution to New Zealand's waning national pride could be being the best in the world at herpes. And the great thing about this is no one else was trying. So, you know, it seemed like we could have a good shot. And something we know too, just from living here, is that New Zealand loves when there's a headline about us overseas. So we thought maybe we could get other people talking about this too, to get New Zealanders to pay attention. So this was going to be our ticket to glory. This inspired really a search into, you know, what does it look like when New Zealand wins? And it's some of this really good stuff, like this vintage, you know, Peter Jackson at the Oscars, Miss World, you know, the golden era of New Zealand at its finest. which inspired our art direction. A little bit retro, a little bit kind of tourism New Zealand, something that you just would not expect from herpes. It's very, very unsexy, which was almost, the point. There's an assumption that if someone has herpes that they're a certain type of person, when really they're not. It could be anyone. So we wanted to make this completely removed from that issue. So this was our art direction, something that would get people's attention. And it also, with our small budget, once again, we were able to use photography that already existed, that came from the Auckland Museum, a collection that they had by a wonderful photographer called Eric Young. So we had these, utopian images of people out there enjoying New Zealand, the mountains, the fresh water, all of that really wonderful stuff. So we had our 80s inspired typeface. We had this colour palette that was all awash. We knew that, we had a little bit of irony here to play with. So how would we kind of get that out there and make that something bigger and something that would actually change the stigma? So the Herpes Foundation run a helpline and people call them in, distress. And you've got to be in a lot of distress to get an 18-year-old to pick up the phone, which is what they were doing. They basically build scripts off of what they call the herpes Bible. It's a whole lot of myths versus facts, because it's the myths around herpes that kind of make the stigma, keep perpetuating. We knew that we weren't going to get New Zealand to read this herpes Bible when it's a Word document with, this kind of stuff. But we knew that there was something good in this. We just needed to educate people. So we developed an educational meets entertainment web series, something so interesting that people would go out of their way to learn about herpes. And we called it the world's first herpes destigmatization course, something, again, we could be proud of. This was our original vision. We really wanted Helen Clark, and she actually was pretty up for it, although she was, doing some important work with the UN and all kinds of, more important things than chatting to us. So that led us on to, another search. And this, in fact, is our actual spreadsheet of all the people who said no. We didn't have a lot of budget, and actually the Herpes Foundation had never successfully been able to get anyone, not even their board members, to stand up and kind of be a spokesperson or speak about herpes. So we were really up against it. And this was about 3 weeks out from our video shoot, for our education series. So we were kind of struggling until the nation's coach, Graham Henry, pulled through. So our executive creative director, Sam, knew someone who knew someone and managed to get his phone number. And he basically got on the phone and started his big pitch saying, it's about mental health. It's not about herpes. This is something really serious. And he basically said, yeah, all good. Tell me where I should come. What day? And he was in. And from that point on, it kind of unlocked the magic. So I'll just play one of the videos. The series itself had multiple videos, each on a different topic and each with a different host. But this will give you a bit of a taster of what it looked like.
Hello, I'm Sir Graham Henry. Once upon a time, the world wanted to be New Zealand. We had the cup, the clean green image, the earth's sexiest accent. Everyone wanted a slice of our pie. But now look at us. Our sheep to human ratio is embarrassingly low, and pies are pushing $7. Our national pride is somewhat less than outstanding. In other words, it's all ruck and no ball. We need something new to be proud of, something big and brave to put us back on the map. It's time for New Zealand to become the best place in the world to have herpes. Four out of 5 Kiwis are counting on us because no other country is strong enough to tackle this issue. As a former coach of the best team in the world, at the best game in the world, I know what it takes to be the best in the world. With a bit of education, we can beat the stigma. Let's make New Zealand the best place in the world to have herpes. The best place in the world to have herpes.com.
He actually told us not to tell anyone, but the first time he went to write that up, he spelt herpes wrong. We got that footage somewhere. Cool. So we had our cast, and we basically wrote scripts which kept it light, kept it fun, but were each tailored to the individual. And I think that was part of the magic, you know, having Sir Buck Shelford stand up there and say he's one of the toughest bastards in the world, but he's not scared of herpes. It actually does make you think differently. So something that we were really sure about is that we didn't want to hide. We knew that the word herpes had power, and so we made sure that when we, put it in our advertising, we were kind of using that problem to our advantage and using it to get attention, which I think got us a lot of cut through that we wouldn't have otherwise achieved. But we knew that, what happened after people clicked through, we had these videos. It was still a lot of content to kind of engage someone with and keep them hooked. And so what we did is we actually, with some clever people, made a bit of an algorithm, which essentially captured all of those views, shares, comments, every kind of engagement touch point with the campaign, and turned it into a competition. So we created a bespoke herpes destigmatization index, and it gamified basically this destigmatization and had a leaderboard which pitted us against countries around the world. And we partnered with TRA, a research company here in Auckland, to do that research. And that, desire to win really kept people in and kept people, watching every episode of our education series. And after 8 weeks, we beat the entire world at herpes, and the data supported it. So we had over 10,000 hours of lessons watched. That's over 1 year of herpes education. 86% of course participants said they now feel comfortable discussing herpes openly. We had 22,000 PR impressions, and I think in total, the whole campaign, we had $80,000 for all the media spend, talent, video, everything. And finally, and what I'm most proud of, is supportive attitudes toward people with herpes on a national level rose from 44% to 49%. That was measured 7 months after the campaign. And we got herpes trending globally on Google search, which is super fun. So yeah, in terms of takeouts, I think this was a key one for all of us. Sometimes I think it's in our nature to kind of dance around the problem and not talk about it head on, particularly when it's something really awkward. But actually, if you do tackle that head on, it can really be the advantage. And that's what we did here. The other thing I think is that data or statistics or facts doesn't really make you that interesting. Sometimes you have to, things you find interesting, other people don't find interesting, and you have to work a little bit hard at it. So finding something that's going to entertain or make people feel something, that's the kind of secret ticket to their attention. And that's what our destigmatization index looked like here. So finally, that humour and play, that gamification, that's something that, behaviour science-wise really works, and something that I think, particularly when it's a topic that people are scared to talk about or don't want to talk about or avoiding, that's something that, particularly in New Zealand, helps kind of lower the barrier, and it's certainly what we use with this campaign. And finally, I think, part of it was about making this really collective, making this something that was about New Zealand, not about the individual who may have this virus. But ultimately, those results that we saw were on an individual level. And the Herpes Foundation went from getting, phone calls of people in absolute distress to getting thousands of messages like this from actually all around the world, but people saying, seeing Daddy Bloomfield's face and hearing him tell me I'm amazing and deserving of intimacy honestly got me out of a really dark hole. And I think that's the bit that's really rewarding for us, and the bit that, again, we're very, very proud of. So I'm sure this was a little bit different for you today, but I hope that it's a bit of a challenge. It's what you think might be a crazy idea isn't always a crazy idea. It might be the right idea. So I'm looking forward to hearing how your discussions go later on today. And I will pass it over to Naomi now from Sharesies to share. Awesome. It's a little bit.
Gosh, I'm glad we've got creative folk like Hilary, because being a data nerd myself, I don't think looking at the data that would have been where I thought the campaign would go. So that was wonderful. Thank you. As Hilary said, I'm Naomi Garry. I'm from Sharesies. I was previously the head of data and analytics, and led corporate strategy for a time, but now I'm leading an exciting new space called expansion products within the personal space at Sharesies. So that means we're expanding into exciting new wealth verticals, including savings, insurance, and there's a lot more to come. So I'm really glad to be here to talk to you all today, because I want to hear all your ideas as I'm thinking about this new space. Little bit about Sharesies. So our purpose is to create financial empowerment for everyone, every person, every whānau, and every business. And we've been working on this strategy for a while now. Sharesies has existed for 8 years, and we currently serve 850,000 investors across Australia and New Zealand with a range of different products. You're probably familiar with our Invest product. We have a leading KiwiSaver offering. We have Save products, and we've recently launched a car insurance offering as well. An area of the business that you may be less familiar with is our B2B offering. We serve over 600 customers, both in the private and public space. In the publicly listed space, we work with folk like Fonterra, delivering their farming trading platform, Spark and New Zealand. We help with capital raises, employee share schemes, stuff like that. In the private space, we serve about 550 companies, and they range in size. They might be fast-growing tech startups like Henry or Crimson Education, or they might be larger enterprises like Becker, and we help them manage their cap tables, employee share schemes, a little bit of registry stuff. So that's part of the business that maybe is less visible when you're just looking at us in your phone. But probably one of our fastest growing revenue streams. We manage 10 billion, we have 10 billion of assets under management at the moment, and every month that's growing. So it's a really exciting time to be at Sharesies and leading expansion. 67% of our users are under the age of 40, so they're quite different to maybe what you think about when you think about wealth and investing, and we really kind of captured that market of the Gen Zs and alphas now and the millennials. So that's kind of what I want to tell you about today. So I'm going to start by winding back the clock and back to where Sharesies started with this lovely group of founders over 8 years ago. So the mission back then was to give everybody with $5 or $5 million the same money opportunity. And now we've kind of outgrown that. We've got around 2,000 millionaires on the platform. We're working with really big businesses. But for a long time, this served us as our mission. And when the founders were going around and trying to raise capital for this big idea, this big ambitious thing, the doors were shutting, and people were assessing that opportunity and saying, well, there's only 1% of New Zealand that invest. That leaves 99% that aren't investing. I don't know whether we can invest in this because the addressable market is so small. But they really flipped that on its head and changed the basis of competition by changing the question, really, and that's maybe something that we need to think about in the life and health insurance space. Not who is an investor today, but who wants to be an investor, and well, that's closer to 100%. And once they'd kind of got that, they had an investable idea. So they went forth, they got their funding, and then they started to look at the insights on the whole market. And this is kind of what came back. It was really big and blue and institutional, and it was, exclusive and full of jargon, and technology was a real barrier. And so they started to chip away at these things because there was just not really any room for pink. But as they chipped away, more things could kind of become Sharesies and become pink. So first, they looked at the exclusivity space, and they introduced fractionalization into investing, and that meant that everybody could have access with as little money as $1. And then they thought, well, why is there all this jargon? Like, is it necessary? Can we make it more human? And they flipped that. And then they thought technology has been seen as a barrier in this industry for a really long time. We can't do it. We can't do fractionalization because of the technology. And they have turned that into a strategic advantage, and where we innovate at every level. And they continued down this path, flipping into knowledge, making fear control, and making investing something that really motivates folk. And when we think about big companies that are inaccessible, now we're working with those companies so that they become partners to those that invest in them. And we're still working on this mission, and we're still chipping away what is thought to be this big blue financial industry. We're hoping to turn into wealth building opportunities for our investors. So that's a bit about our journey, but how are we doing this? What's the recipe? Well, we really focus on minimal, lovable products. And you might be familiar, if there's any product people in the room, with MVP thinking. We do it a little bit differently at Sharesies. So while we focus on what is the most critical aspects that we need to deliver to the customer, we have a minimum standard for lovability, and we expect our product teams to deliver a certain level of delight in the things that they deliver to our customers. We don't just deliver products, we deliver experiences, and we think about how all this knits together. But the main thing that we're trying to do is get the products in the hands of our customers as soon as possible, so that we can understand through real data how that product is being received, what we need to do next. And we have a really active community of investors and customers who are constantly telling us what they want next and what we can improve. So that's a really important part of the brain and what happens behind the scenes at Sharesies. This kind of ethos and recipe has allowed us to deliver things really rapidly. So while we started in 2017 with just 6 beta funds that people could invest into, we quickly scaled that to multiple markets. We scaled that to our B2B offering. We started working with some of the biggest organisations in New Zealand, and quickly we delivered our KiwiSaver, our Save products. Car insurance came next. And now later in the year you can expect to see spend come out, which is really exciting. Crypto's in the works, coming in the next couple of months too. And as we look into the future, we're looking at advice, we're looking at life insurance potentially, and wills. So it's a really exciting space to be working in at the moment, and a great opportunity for me to learn from you guys. I'm going to take you through a little case study. I know general insurance is very different from what we're talking about today, but I think there's some useful learnings in this. So Sharesies has a bit of a vision about making things accessible all in one place. People spend a lot of time in the app, and we want to help them manage all of their wealth in one place. So, that might be crypto, that might be your KiwiSaver, but it also might be your insurance. And to dip our toes in the water, we decided to partner with Cove and deliver car insurance. The whole purpose of this was to, as I said, make it accessible and tangible. And, Brooke, our CEO, talks about how she was driving around in a Tesla and didn't actually know it wasn't insured. So it's probably, because it was so hard that she had to go into another app. She needed to find the paperwork. She's very busy. And so having it now in her app, she can see it. She knows everything's kind of checked off. We designed something that was really flexible. It could tailor to what their customer needed really easily, digital first, really simple design. And it's there in your app if you need to make a claim. It's really, really ready to go, and you don't need to think about it again. what made this a successful partnership, what made this a successful product delivery was the partnership. Cove is a similar age to us. They started in 2017. They've got a really good, flexible tech stack, and they've been really easy to work with. So I think that like-minded approach and, being really aggressive on the technology, being completely customer-focused, set it apart and allowed us to deliver a really rapid solution to our customers. So we started the discovery with Cove in December, and by June last year, that product was out in market. And that's like pretty quick going for all the teams, but it's been really valuable to customers. We've continued to iterate on that as well, delivering EV insurance coverage and doing a promotion recently with Air Points, and that's led to us selling about 1,000 policies in the last 2 months. So it's really clear that there's appetite there from our customers to get a really good deal, and also manage everything in one place. So that's a little bit about Sharesies and where we're learning and growing in the insurance space. But I thought maybe I'd have a go at thinking about what this might mean for life insurance and health insurance, given this is the room I have access to today. Well, when Sharesies thinks about this, we're thinking about financial resilience. How do we make people feel like they're adulting well and they've got it together? And I'm still in that kind of discovery phase. But in my analysis, these are the kind of things that come up when people think about life insurance. There's a bit of apathy. It's maybe seen as expensive when maybe it doesn't have to be. It's a bit morbid, like not great to talk about. But it's a similar problem that we faced in investing. And so how do we flip the script as an industry and make it feel transparent and aligned to my life and accessible and really reliable? And that's a really great provocation for us when we're going through the workshop later today. Maybe just keep these kinds of values or thoughts in the back of your head for what we might want our young folk to be thinking about when they think about life and health insurance. Thank you for having me and letting me talk to you a little bit. I'm really looking forward to getting down there and chatting with you more directly. Thank you.
Right, so we're going to have a panel discussion now between the team here. You also have the opportunity to ask questions yourselves. So I have been informed that you can use the app and you must select Great Room 4 for the question to get to us. If not, we might just go to the old-fashioned put your hand up later if it's not really working for us. I thought we'd think about sort of structuring the questions around understanding the generation with the panel and what they've been doing, product design and accessibility, a little bit about building brand connection, and a little bit around communication and engagement channels as well. So if we start talking about Gen Z, Millennials and Gen Alpha, we know they're health-focused, digitally native. They expect services to be easy, fair, values-driven. But we also know they're delaying the big milestones that they have. So the traditional insurance, life insurance milestones of buying a house and having children are getting delayed. So how do we make insurance relevant to them in their earlier life? So I'm going to start with Chris.
Right.
From MoneyHub.
Sure.
Taking a consumer lens, what are young Kiwis telling you they want in life and health insurance, and what do you think's holding them back?
Sure. So what we've seen is basically lots of complexity around policies. They're so long. That's just an industry thing. There are numerous pages, lots of glossary, and people want to make decisions. But the problem is they're not really sure that there's too much decision paralysis, there's too many options, and it's not simple. So people are going to Reddit and they're saying, what should I do? And then you're getting a whole bunch of random stuff come in, and it doesn't seem very logical in some sense. Then they'll come to a site like MoneyHub and we'll go through it. But at the same time, we're not going like sort of step by step through the policies because there's so many of them. So they're looking for simplicity. They're looking for, basically a clear view of what to take. But they're actually relying on third parties and not always experts. And that's quite the danger as well. And they're not sure what they're insuring for. Sometimes they're not looking at the actual risks, and so they'll insure for things that they don't need to be insured for. And it's just not, I mean, the advisors are doing great work with those that contact them, but there's a cohort of people who may be pre-children, maybe pre-house or something, that are just confused. So this, of course, benefits MoneyHub because we get to, obviously sort of educate them, but at the same time, we want to see people make smart decisions. So a very sort of long-winded answer for quite a large problem.
I can tell Dean has something to say here.
I was also just curious before we even get into it, as everybody, because obviously FSC's a broad group, who's in insurance sector here? Just to get a sense. Great. So now I know. All uninformed speaking to the informed. Good. But hopefully that's the challenge of the point of the panel, right, is to present a different perspective. I guess, the topic is obviously centered around life and health insurance. And from my perspective, I thought Kirk had a really good point around health insurance and workplace and the role of workplace within insurance. I think that is a big opportunity. It's something that we've done at Kernel, rolling out health cover for all of our staff. I think from my experience as well, like going through this, I'm in financial services. I am should have some good sense of the stuff. Insurance is incredibly complicated. You guys are speaking another language to me. It'll be the same maybe around KiwiSaver investing, right? But when it came to, again, the trigger for me was great. We just bought a house with my partner. So that those dependencies and risks have changed. And I guess the big question that sort of maybe the controversial question in the room is, why should a young person actually even have life insurance? Because are we actually just trying to sell them a product that they do not need and putting a cost burden on them that they do not need? Health potentially, life is not relevant. If you do not have dependents, if you do not have a partner or spouse that you're trying to worry about and set up, let's be clear, if something happened, not a big issue. The one that we should be talking about is more the trauma and those sort of protection covers, because they are the genuine risks. They are the risks that actually we're more likely to incur, have a major event and now your life outlook is fundamentally changed. And so, it's that reminder in the room, let's not try and sell products to people. Let's actually ensure that they're having a conversation around the problems that are real for them and that are going to create value.
So when we think about that, a lot of that is in the "it won't happen to me" scenario, especially when we think about trauma and your younger generations. Any ideas across the panel about how we could connect with that messaging that actually, hey, it is protection for you and it does provide something for the future?
Surely this is another herpes type campaign here. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point that you make. And one of the other, really fun projects we work on at Motion Sickness is with fire and emergency, and their whole role of trying to stop young people from, lighting their flat on fire. There's a similar challenge in the sense that we are basically programmed as humans with something called the optimism bias, and that's what allows us to get through life. Like if you were concerned all the time about the worst thing that's going to happen to you, you would be frozen. So human nature basically means I focus on the here and now and I don't worry about the thing that I don't think is going to happen to me. There's a whole lot of other kind of interesting levers you can then pull. So for fire and emergency, one thing that we did was, for these young people, it was more important for them to be seen as cool, fun and social than it was for them to be seen as a safe, responsible person. So we basically tried to make it as cool, fun and social as we could. So I think it's probably actually stepping back and stopping thinking about people as Gen Z and starting to think about them as individual people that are living their lives and finding the bits in there that's interesting.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think, you're right, people are having babies later and buying their first houses later because of all these economic pressures, but we're also going to be the generation that need to look after our older parents a little bit. There's people have complex lives, and I think it's about understanding those as individuals, finding opportunities, and also just getting back to the customer. I think insurance, a dominant distribution channel has been the advisor networks. And so requirements for how we build insurance products have come from that channel, and that's an intermediary between you and your customer, your ultimate customer, right? So I think we need to just reconnect with those customers, understand what their needs are, think about income protection, think about the things that they're actually going to worry about, and then make it really simple and stripped back, so that there's not this huge burden of admin, which millennials don't love, to kind of clamber over before I can get the job done and feel like I'm financially resilient and covered.
I would say as well, I wasn't here for the session this morning, but there is an interesting relationship between belief and action. And I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here, but recycling is used as the example. So if you ask someone, are you the type of person to recycle? Some will say yes, some will say, I don't care. If you actually get people to start recycling, they are much more likely, even if you just force them to do it, they are then much more likely to say, I am the type of person who recycles later on. I believe in it, I'm doing it. And so I think sometimes you have to just play with the order in which you do things. So that employer thing is really interesting, because if I'm sitting here as a 20-year-old and insurance, what is that? Nothing. It means nothing to me. It's got no relevance to my life. But all of a sudden, if I have insurance, now it's relevant. So if you can get those little gateways, those little kind of gaps that you can kind of get into and then work from there, I think there's opportunity.
Our experience of rolling out health cover to all of our staff, I was incredibly surprised. We had a 40% use of it within the first 12 months. And just minor things, somebody actually had a major surgery that they could not get through the public system, right? And as soon as people started to hear those examples, those positive outcomes, it was a game changer and people were talking about it. But I think it's how do you create those moments and how do you have that positive spin? I was thinking here about, you're in advertising, is it ACC that's running the ad of don't do the think in the back of your head? It's almost, we need an ad for the opposite to encourage the trauma thing. It's it should give you confidence. We should be out there living our lives, and hey, by having trauma, I know that I can kind of have some backstop, but maybe not full bungee jumping everything all the time. But there's that kind of, again, trying to think about how do you create that positive narrative and feed it into people's lives, because it is just well down the list, I think, for most people in terms of priorities. But it's actually not costly, that's the thing. The one thing I experienced from going through the process, though, and again, it's from an outside perspective of not understanding the legacy behind this and the product differentiation and sort of the rationale for this, is we used an advisor and it was quite useful. And mainly because when it comes to some of those policies, there is so much in the fine print, and you really have no clue about comparing a single price point as to really what you've got. And so KiwiSaver is actually easier. I can tell you now, KiwiSaver selection and risk profile, that's actually super easy compared to insurance, and the variation in policies and what you're actually covered for. And I think that also feeds into why you feel like sometimes you need that advice, is because, same when we've looked through the health policies, there's various tiers and various, cases of when you're covered and when you're not. And how do you simplify that down? How do you just simplify that whole policy cover down to be very transparent, very simple, and have confidence that, hey, I'm covered. All the things in my life that I think are common sense and I would have thought I'm covered for are covered. I don't have to be concerned that I've read every bullet point in the policy statement.
When we're thinking about this, I have just finished chairing the Consumer Engagement Committee for the FSC, and one of the things we talk a lot about there is financial literacy, and how we can connect with consumers and improve that. When we think about insurance and connecting with younger generations, what role do you think education and financial literacy play? And any ideas you have for how we can deliver it, and whose job is it? I mean, the government has stepped in, and hopefully there's a program coming for younger, those at school. But what we found when we were looking at for the FSC is, unfortunately now, if you're over 20, you've missed everything when you're at school. There's not a lot available for you because you're not looking at retirement, and there's a big gap. So what are the ideas? Anyone.
I think what we have learned from our customer base, which is largely in the demographic you guys are interested in hearing about today, is that they like to tinker and play and learn by doing, and being able to do that in a low risk way. You know, with investing, it was people would put on, $50 and then they'd buy a couple of things and then this one's gone up and this one's gone down and now I understand what an ETF is. That's the way that they learned. And I think that's how education needs to follow in the financial space. We can't have these big documents that people have to read to really understand what they're buying, or expect them to seek out this large, voluminous information in books and so forth. That's not how they interact with anything in the world. So why would they do that when they're thinking about their finances? So I think we need to come to them and really help them by providing things they can play with and really learn by doing.
So for us, we like lots of videos. We're finding that works really well. And I would suggest for insurers to actually take the time to put out videos, because people are clearly watching them, just breaking down things, explaining them, because very few people are doing that, and it makes you very transparent. So if you can just really distill it and make it clear, I'm not talking about 30-second videos, I'm talking about 5-minute videos. People will watch them. It's been successful. People just there's a lot of lazy people out there who want to make smart decisions, and they will watch a video and they'll do the reading that is associated. But I tell insurance clients that we have and insurance partners, please do more video. That's much in demand. So
we've talked a lot about policy wording and simplification of policy wording and people understanding it. Having worked in a few insurance companies, that is a lot harder than it sounds. What are your ideas for how we can simplify policy wording and design products that grow with customer needs? It's probably a really good one to start with you, Naomi, where you've obviously done something similar in adjacent fields.
Yeah, I think when it comes to insurance, we need to think about people's whole of life. And, when we're lucky in that we do work with customers who are typically of higher income, and that means that often that they can self-insure to a certain degree. And so when we think about insurance, we think about what you might need on top of that. We don't think about, we want to sell you a product. We want to help you feel financially resilient. So that's kind of our vision as we're looking into life insurance. With investing, it was all about breaking down the jargon. And it's not necessarily that jargon is bad. That is necessary in niche industries or specific industries. It's about explaining it in a human tone, putting it in the right place in the product flow so that you're learning about the thing that you need to learn about in that step. And you're not having to remember something from a while ago, and then, providing the wraparound information on various social media and community pages so that people can help each other and get confident that they know what they need to know to make good decisions.
Is there any, again, outside in, is there any standardization, structuring around how policies are written or worded? There's no prescribed formats.
The Retirement Commission did produce a glossary a little while ago, but different insurers have different approaches.
Because I guess, a question back to the industry to self-reflect on, and it's a regulatory question, but, the financial services, or the investment side of the equation, obviously went through quite a big change 10 years ago when we went from, now I've gone blank on it, your IMA and supporting documents. So everybody used to have these quite bespoke, very long, very wordy investment offer documentations. And then we went to the product disclosure statement, which is prescriptive text, capped number of pages, very detailed, and it's basically fill in the blanks. Then you have your supporting documents like an OMS and others where you can get into more nitty-gritty differentiation, risks, other bespoke information. But that was quite a step change for the industry to go from having very lengthy, very jargon, very industry-led kind of documents to something that a consumer could digest. And very quickly, now you know, if I go to this page between each KiwiSaver, I can find the fees section. I can compete what the investment options are. I can see a bullet point paragraph as to what this is about, and then I can go deeper if I need it. But there's almost a challenge back to the insurance industry, like, how do you have that standardization? Like, even if it's just a high-level document that enables people to very quickly see those core bits of information in the same spots, in the same sections over and over, then that will, I think, helps break down that sort of barrier and confidence and closes that education gap a bit.
If we talk a little bit about insurance, it is a rational category and, can seem at times boring to younger generations. But we know with brands you want to connect emotionally, which is what Hilary was talking about with the herpes campaign. They also want brands to support brands that reflect their values and stand for something. Hilary, this is a good question for you on this one. You've built award-winning campaigns that connect on a human level. How do you cut through in a traditional category like insurance, and what role do you think emotional could play?
That's a very big question. I think one thing I would say is that we do tend to generalise a lot with different generations, and I think that there is this kind of belief that all young people want to save the world. Or all young people care about certain things, but actually young people are as diverse as we are, we being, everyone in this room. And so I think it's about like looking for that nuance within it. And then there are differences which we focus on, but also there are probably also similarities that we all have in common. So there's opportunity there too. But it really comes down to, I think, getting to know the people as people. Whether that's actually going out and talking to some people and getting some honest truths. Like, we're often very guilty, I think, of staying in our little bubble. The thing that I see a lot is people going, oh, well, I talk to my son or my daughter and they're 20. Well, the thing is that they've grown up with a mum or a dad who works in this industry. And also they probably have, I'm sure you've all got wonderful children who've, gone on to do really great things and got an education, and they are themselves a certain type of person. So I think talking to people, getting outside your comfort zone, finding, other maybe similar categories that have done similar things to get some inspiration. You have to kind of get outside your norm to make that happen.
Chris, one for you. From a consumer advocacy perspective, how do you think insurers can build trust and credibility? We know it's something that is always an issue for insurers. What do you think?
So what we've seen with some insurers is they've gone through the Right Mark that program where they take their policies and send it to Right Mark, who then review them and kind of give suggestions. I think AIA does that. I'm not entirely sure. The industry will know. That's helpful because it's putting things into plain English. It's not, who is it? Okay, great. Yes, Astron, sorry. And more things like that. That does show a focus. I have no affiliation with Right Mark or anything like that, but it really does show that you actually want to make them better. And I think just really reaching out to people. I'm going to talk about Reddit again. Oh God, I'm always talking about it, but it is the fact that there are some brands on there that talk directly with the readers and the Redditors. And I know that Kernel does this. I know that Sharesies does it. Yes. And it does work. And so then the stuff stays live, but just making things simple without giving it tailored advice, it stays there and it helps people. So the more you can actually engage directly and make things into plain English, it's going to win. Because it's so competitive, but the easier it is for somebody, it's just that they'll have more trust and they'll make smarter decisions.
I think it brings us onto channels and channels of engagement a little bit, which is always something as we talk about younger audiences. Social media being a thing. And authentic marketing is something that they definitely look out for. And they do want that trust and transparency. I guess, Dean, Kernel has built a loyalty in the competitive space. What lessons can we take from what you've done?
It's, I think, well, maybe it's a reflection of, we've not really had much strategy, just for full clarity here. I think when it comes to the brand perception, we've actually done everything in-house, and we're a small team of 24 people. So, we are pretty lean and mean, but I think maybe what comes across is that people do read through and see the genuineness about what we stand for. And I think from day dot, the purpose, what we've done, the way we design our products, the fee model, we're very transparent, we're very accessible, and I think maybe that is what's led to it, and that's kind of formed the foundation. And I think, that is what people are looking for, particularly in an increasingly digital world, right? And it comes back to how do you make these things still human? It's like the differentiation and strength is going to be how do you make things feel human, relatable, and brands that come around that, and they will see the authenticity of it, they will understand, do you live and breathe it? And they get a sense of our culture. When our team has been out and about, they speak to anyone of our team, they know that we genuinely stand for what we're trying to deliver for our customers. So that's kind of the the result has been the byproduct of what we are, without any deeper thought to that. And so we hire on that basis, and the way we think about our team and design. And it's that, I was at this Jade event the other day, and it was really good. And it's like we have that horrible Harvard, one of the panelists was talking about, this customer centricity thing, right? We all say that. But the reframing was actually what you need to create as fans. And if you've got fans, that's a much different way of thinking about your customers, because we're all trying to be customer centric, but are you genuinely live and breathe it, and are you building fans? And I think if you can achieve that, then that will cut through.
I would say, while Dean says they had no strategy, you've obviously put effort into it. It's not that you haven't tried. Like, you have to protect those things that come naturally, right? Like, at first, that's how it just started. But as things grow and develop and expand, you have to put in the effort to keep those, value those things and keep them alive, so you don't just become like everyone else.
Naomi, what about you? Sharesies obviously does a lot in this space, a lot of data.
Yeah. And my thinking back to my day-to-days and all our segmentation, and we've got a really thriving community of brand fans who basically, as soon as we even release a wait list for a new product, they're there and they want to get it and they want to play with it and they want to read about it. So I think it has to stay true to your brand narrative, like the guys have mentioned, but I think it's also about giving people exclusivity and really understanding what they want and how you make them feel with new products, and that's something that we really care about in cultivating our brand fans, and helping our customers to stay connected to who we are and what we're trying to do.
I've got a couple from the floor here. Andrew has been busy. One for you, Naomi. Love the use of humour to diffuse the herpes stigma. Shared laughter is a great social lubricant. How do you balance the need for serious content with humorous delivery?
Balance. Was it balance the
Serious content.
Oh, yes. I think it's interesting. People are kind of feel like those two things can't go together, but tension is where, all jokes are built on tension, that's the kind of, that's what makes a conversation interesting. That's, I guess, why you watch the Netflix drama that you do. It's the highs and the lows. So, I think something we always talk about is attention being really our biggest enemy, not the competition. When you were talking about social media before, that's a fantastic channel, but all of a sudden you're in competition with the world, not each other there. So I think thinking about how you can surprise people and actually being careful about that balance. I think being empathetic checking in with others who might not have the same views as you to make sure that that's kind of landing in the right place. But actually realising that taking a little bit of a calculated risk reaps a reward. I don't think there's any like formula or kind of rule you can use. You just have to put a bit of common sense in there too.
Any questions from the floor before we go to the panel walking around? No. What you'll see now is there's 4 questions that hopefully will flash up. She says, not seeing a tech person anywhere. There we go, still there. That are going to be used for table discussion. So the idea behind these is to generate some discussion between yourselves around some potentially contentious questions. But the panel will be coming around to have a chat with you on the tables. It's your opportunity to ask them the questions, and any burning needs that you have, they are open and available to you. So off they go. Thanks, everyone. Hope you had the ability to interact with our panellists and ask them the questions that you wanted answered. We are the last thing that's standing between you and a drink. So we'll just finish off with one outtake from each of the panellists about today's session, taken from what you've heard on the stage or what you've discussed in the tables. Yeah, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. So much to cover. So we really looked at basically the fact that young people may see themselves as quite sort of invincible, but if they buy insurance, it kind of complements them for any risk. So it's like, well, I'm young, it's not going to happen to me, but if it does, this is what I can be protected for.
Yep, perfect. Pass it along.
I had to have a mint, didn't I? The things we sort of talked about was the solution. We talked a little bit more about the idea of the PDS type, how do you create standards, but obviously understanding how complicated policies are in this space, and that's when we sort of started diving into the challenges of, like, again, the factors that are changing today where even existing policies don't necessarily hold up around, like, mental health challenges. So if you're talking about younger generations, well, how are you going to deal with those different risks and manage that from a policy perspective and give people the confidence that they're going to be covered in those unknown situations. So yeah, there's a lot that's going to evolve with technology, AI, mental health. The risk factors in the world we're operating today is quite different to the policies that were written 10, 20 years ago. So a big still challenge ahead.
Naomi?
Me and the Chubb chaps and the Partners Life guys were chatting a little bit about kind of seeing customers as partners. Life insurance is a really long game, and we want to be, with them and supporting our customers for a really long time, and we want them to have long, happy, healthy lives. And so how do we meet the needs of them today? And they look quite different to maybe what the policies that were written a few decades ago. But how do we meet them today so that we can be there when they do hit those life stages, having kids, getting married, buying houses? Those are all the triggers of old, but we want to be building those relationships before we kind of get there.
And Hilary.
I should have thought about writing notes. I guess there's a general theme, I think, being new to this industry as well. To me, it really seems that there is a structural thing going on here. And there is also a cultural thing going on with maybe this particular industry. And it's kind of interesting in all of this conversation because we're kind of asking young people to come and spend their money with us. But the conversation is kind of, but we're not going to change anything for you. So, like, we're asking them to change, but a willingness to change and innovate and adapt, even like the lovely team said in the middle there, around why do they have to pick up the phone if they don't want to? Like, you kind of need to give something to get something back, right? So that's been the overall theme, I would say.